That's gold.
Good morning. It's Scale School 2026. You guys ready for a new semester, a new time? We're still learning, we're doing things, we're making waves. But today we have an all-scale school cast, and we're going to be jumping in to some really exciting stuff around privacy for agentic commerce. And with us, we have our very special blurry guest, Mr. Connor Murphy. How are you doing?
I'm not too blurry. Good. You know, we must still be on winter break if I'm being brought in. So it's only a Scalian scale school. So I appreciate the call up, but doing good. Excited for this year. I think we've got a lot of things we're going to take care of.
100%. Lots to do. Start of the year, we're already going hard. Got some good things in the oven. You know, we're heating up. But as always, we have Sawyer. Yeah.
I could tell you're excited to talk to me today.
Yeah.
Are you gonna add
Lovely,
the spiel in?
thank you.
Was the spiel just private, or is that also?
No. The
spiel's
spiel is private.
That's so you know how to conduct yourself during my classroom session. Speaking of, I was thinking about it as you were saying we're back in for a new semester. It's kind of weird that like every episode is like a new class, but we don't actually have like a class. Like when you go to school, you pick your class and then you got like these long running things. We don't have that. And so I don't know, we might be misrepresenting what school really is to.
Well, that's an American school though.
Oh, you guys do it differently in England.
Yeah, you just go and you do what you're told.
Okay then. We're going to come back to that later. Let's kick this thing off.
Let's kick it off. Privacy, man. You know, sometimes when it's late at night, and you're lonely, you might go somewhere, but you don't want people to see where you go. Privacy, it's important.
Where are you
Who
going?
knows? Yeah, sure, bar.
Is this like you don't want people to know you're going to the bar? Or
yeah, sure. Why not?
I don't know. I feel like you're implying something different here.
Potentially, who knows? But the importance of privacy, we all do things that we don't want people to know about or see. You don't want, there's security risks. You don't want potentially people to know if you have a billion Bitcoin. And it's important.
If you have a billion Bitcoin, I would love to know how you made that happen, since I was under the impression that was mathematically impossible.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm Satoshi. You heard it here first. So let's jump in. Connor, give us a little bit of a rundown on what is agentic privacy, why is it important, and how are we here at Scale making it work?
Okay, yeah. Well, first, quick introduction. Connor here, VP of Strategy and Sales, been with the team for now over 6 years. So I think that's like 100 years in crypto years, maybe even longer. So I've seen a lot, and what I'd say is I'm extremely excited about where we're going within agentic commerce and specifically privacy for it. So I guess the first question, what is it defining agentic commerce? Is that where we want to kick things off and then move into there? Yeah, I think for me, I bifurcate agentic commerce into two different sections. We have and I'm going to take more of the layman's business approach to all this, and Sawyer can hop in and speak more technical, but I want to think of this as everyday people and potentially users down the road, how they should think about this. So for me, it's really two camps. It's conversational commerce and autonomous commerce. And so the conversational side is human in the loop. So when you are prompting something, when you are part of that process. And I think this will be a lot of people's first interactions with agentic commerce. So for example, we've got a lot of people use ChatGPT. Maybe over Christmas time, you said, hey, I'm looking for new sneakers. I'd like them to be this size, this color, and I want them to be worn by these types of basketball players. Does a lot of computation on the back end and then brings you back in for the last mile and says, would you like to purchase this? And you can click yes. So there's computation on the back end, but you are prompting the agent and then you are fulfilling it. And then the second piece would be autonomous commerce. And I think that's really where a lot of the growth is going to come, but we've got to take this, one step at a time. But that autonomous commerce is going to be that agent to agent commerce. So where agents are going out there and they're being a part of this agentic marketplace autonomously. So an agent consuming data, getting access to information, paying for different services. And this is the piece where X402 I think really will shine. This is where 8004 is really valuable, and this is where SKALE is really valuable because of the small transactions, the speed needed, and the permissionless nature. So I think just like kind of from a first principle standpoint, that's how I look at agentic commerce, and then from there, there's a lot of primitives, including privacy.
Very nice.
I like it. I think one thing, which will probably just help us really set the stage for those listening, is there's something Connor said that's, I think, really important. Well, two things. One, everything is really important. Two things I want to pull out. One, privacy is a primitive, right? It's like, I think there's this weird shift that always happens, not just in crypto, but in the world, where these things come out and people think they're really important, and then they kind of disappear. People forget about them. Then they keep coming back over and over. When that happens, I kind of define that as a primitive. That's like something people use to make other things better, and it almost becomes table stakes. And I think privacy is one of those things. I think anybody right now who's they're betting the farm on privacy, and they're like, we're going to be the only ones with privacy and do it better than everybody else. I don't think they're going to win long term in anything, just because I think privacy is something that everybody at some point is going to have to play catch up on and be like, we need this in some way, shape, form. It's primitive. So that's kind of one. The second is where agentic commerce shines today versus tomorrow. We are, at the end of the day, we are tech people. We work in big tech or crypto tech. And we are always kind of on the bleeding edge of what's coming. And I think what's really interesting is the concept of agentic commerce and agentic payments is really cool from a long-term standpoint of well, if it has a bunch of information on me, it can just go do things for me and buy things for me. And I can kind of automate that part of my life that, let's be honest, no one really loves going shopping on Amazon every 30 days for the same thing. But if you're like me, you still refuse to hit the subscription button. Just won't do it. But I'd love if an agent could kind of take care of that for me. It'd be cool. But we're not quite there yet, right? Where we are is in that prompting phase. And I think that's really important because it really sets the stage for where society's at today with how we're interacting with AI. Today, people are prompting these agents, saying, hey, I want to do this. We're giving it the context and we're guiding the agents. And that's definitely a great step one. I think we're farther along than anybody ever thought we would be. Didn't really think this was going to be possible in our lifetime, so it's pretty cool. And I think where we believe the world is going is that point where the prompt to the agents get more and more generic, and the agents start to just feed off this information, the inbound info, which all of a sudden gives them the ability to actually have agency, be autonomous. And then again, if I need more shampoo, I don't know, maybe we're going to get to the point of smart showers, right? Shampoo's low. Agent sees that, buys shampoo, shows them at my door the next day or within 3 hours. Because again,
do you remember those Amazon buttons you used to be able to get?
Yes, but I never had them.
Yeah, there was one for Head and Shoulders. It's you'd run out, you'd press the button and things like that. But it was nobody wanted to actually pay for the button, and that was the biggest issue. But yeah, sorry, tangent.
No, it's a perfect example though, right? I think so. I'm already rambling, but I want to put one item on the table because I think Connor's gonna be able to run with this really well. The term agency, the term agent and agency comes from the idea that something can go figure it out. That's the root of what it means, right? Or if you didn't know, that's what it means. So when we talk about an agent, it's kind of funny that we say autonomous agent because it's almost, I think, like a duplicative term. Essentially, an agent should be capable of taking a bunch of information and going to figure something out. And so the concept of real agency means it just goes and figures it out, right? So when we think about that on a blockchain, I think what's really important for me is I'm really starting to see this shift in how developers are thinking about building platforms and applications and protocols to say, this doesn't work with Stripe. This doesn't work with Visa. This doesn't work with the existing solutions, but it does work on blockchain. So that's like part one. But then part two is it works here. However, I'm sacrificing privacy because of the fact that blockchains inherently today are not private. If you're using one of the top 10 blockchains in the world, it's not private. So I think like those two pillars, those two levers are really critical toward where agentic commerce is starting to go. I'm just curious, Connor, you obviously are, you lead sales at SKALE. You're talking with, I know, hundreds of these developers, protocols. Where do you see this shift in what people are using and how that privacy component with SKALE is driving developers to make decisions on how they build?
Yeah, I think it's important because, I mean, this goes back to timing with everything. And there's a great phrase in investing. Even if if you're right but off on time, you're still wrong. And that's the case with everything, right? People were doing augmented things 5, 10, 15 years ago, and they might have hit the exact product someone needed, but they didn't have the underlying technology. And so for developers, it's really interesting. And I'm going to couch some of my statements because I think it's important not to put too many guardrails around developers, because these are entrepreneurs and they should be visionary. And the best entrepreneur is someone who has a vision of the world. And ideally that vision of the world is different from what it is right now. And that's why these are pattern breakers, and that's why that they're able to break down incumbents. And that's also why large incumbents have the innovator's dilemma. So I'm not going to directly say you should be doing one way or the other, because I do think there's value in both. And I think that's a really interesting piece of where AI is going that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about. That when there's been platform changes in the past, there's been a ton of disruption, where I actually think this could be a point in time where, yes, there will be disruption. There will be startups who bring in, multimodal type applications where you interact with something you haven't before. Maybe it's just speaking to it. Maybe it's a prompt UI. Maybe it's through your new glasses. But also that these incumbents won't get fully disrupted because they can optimize their business. And you see that with the largest and the Mag 7 and even going down the stack of companies becoming more efficient, or building out more items for their internal teams and being able to leverage that from a agentic standpoint. So I know I didn't answer your specific question, but I think what I will answer is I believe the human to agent market will come sooner. And that sooner is going to be really fascinating. Does that mean that's going to come in the next 3 to 6 months? And then we see agent swarms in the back half of 2026 because there's this crazy exponential growth? Or does that mean we have human to agent type applications for the next 2 years? And then 3 to 5 years out, it's when all of the swarms are coming. I don't know. And I think that's the $1 million, $1 trillion question of this all. But I think initially it's going to be human to agent applications. Where do you actually put that human back in? So back to my definition of agentic commerce, that first group of conversational commerce where humans in the loop. I don't think people fully trust agents yet, and that's fair. I think when it happens, it'll happen really fast and there'll be a blink of an eye, but we're not there yet. And so a human wants to provide information and they want to say yes at the end. So I think building that will have the initial adoption. And that could be the example of what I mentioned in purchasing information. That could be conversational. It could be booking travel. The human wants to really kind of have the agency in a weird way to make that final decision, but they're fine with all that middle work being done. And you can kind of look at this in honestly a lot of parallels to delivery, right? We'll probably see that where you've got long range delivery items. In that middle piece, you'll have autonomous vehicles. You'll probably have robots that are doing items within supply chain, but who's walking that up to your door? Probably a human. We are starting to see the robots transfer to certain areas. Like in Chicago, we have delivery robots, but you've got to go meet that robot on the side of the street, down some steps. And so like that last mile, isn't supposed to be literal. It's what are those final steps? I think we'll get there eventually with autonomous robots, but it's a good parallel to how I think we'll interact with applications where having a human in the loop, people will feel more comfortable about it. But if you're building something for 5 years down the road, I think it's more of the autonomous commerce.
Definitely. I agree fully.
Yeah. And one of the things that I kind of like to look at is, the everyday user, right? And there's always a fear for new things when it comes to the likes of agentic commerce and, even anything, right? Even AI. People are still scared to, I was talking to my brother, he's like, because I said, give them because he was trying to redo his resume. And I said, just give it your resume. He was like, oh yeah, but it's got like my name and stuff on it. And I don't want it. And I'm like, I'm scared. I don't want them to get my information. I was like, bro, they're not getting your information. Like, they're not, like, relax. So how can we, I guess, curtail these fears of,
yeah, I think it's an easy answer. It's a better user experience. I'll give you a specific example from my life. So I came into blockchain, specifically Bitcoin, back in late 2014, and it was from a cypherpunk libertarian background. So I have always been very big into privacy and being a sovereign individual, etc. Until the one day I showed up late for the airport and I saw a clear sign that said, hey, if you come up to me, scan your eyeball, I'll walk you to the front of the line. I did that immediately. And since that point in time, I love Clear and TSA. And I think there's like, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but think about how many times, anytime someone does it, they justify it by going, oh, they already have my data. Oh, they already have that. That's a slippery slope, and I don't want to fully go down it. But the reason why is because they're delighting you, and somehow they're bringing you a user experience that is head and heels above something else that is cheaper, easier, more valuable. And we'll see that continuing to happen. And so, from an AI standpoint, maybe when they feel like they're using it, that might be the further hurdle. But this will also just be ingrained in the back end of so many pieces that then people will realize, oh, I didn't know I was using AI. Well, yeah, you're talking to something. It's calling a query in the background. It's generating a new prompt or ingesting data, and all those back end pieces are going to be invisible, but they're going to just have a better user experience.
I agree fully. And the funny part is we have arguably I'll call it the starter, the big bang of the agentic era is the launch of ChatGPT. And, I'm nerdy. I like tech stuff. I talk to Connor about this all the time. I don't really listen to podcasts, but I've started listening to podcasts when I take my dog for a walk because it's a good way to kind of get out longer and just be away from the computer. I was listening to a really good podcast last night from NVIDIA about something called Mixture of Experts models. It's the one I sent you, Connor. So we're gonna get a little techie here, but it's worth it because it'll hammer Connor's point home very well, I think. AI and machine learning and neural nets have been around for a long time. This stuff isn't new. There's been, I want to say, I listened to different podcasts. I want to say they like the field of like computer vision and like the original concepts of AI and machine learning. I want to say the research really began in like the late 1950s, early 1960s, which sounds crazy because like that's when the computers were like the size of rooms. But it's been around for a long time. And it was actually something where if you talk to a lot of machine learning experts, a lot of the ones I've talked to have said that up until like 2020, 2021, it was a very hard field to be in. You had a lot of like disbelief. People didn't actually think it was a real thing. You're kind of just chasing. And so, anyways, fast forward to when did ChatGPT come out? 2022, if I'm not mistaken, 2021, somewhere in there. Mixture of experts. So a large language model, which is what is behind ChatGPT and all these amazing tools that have taken over the world. All of these tools have a large language model behind them, or models. These models are trained on billions and now even trillions of parameters, which are just data points. And when you train them, what you're really doing is you're building a neural network. A neural network has what's called neurons, and neurons are kind of like how the brain works. If you've ever seen the visualization of like the speed of light bouncing around the brain as information's moving, that's basically how they describe LLMs to people like me who are technical enough to know, but not technical enough to actually know what's going on. So anyways, we've got this LLM. The problem is you have an LLM that's really big. Meta, Facebook, released a model called Llama 405 billion, like, I don't know, a few years ago. It was really powerful, but it was really slow and expensive because it had 405 billion parameters and every single one had to get activated on every request. Mixture of experts models break down this model, and it basically creates this pooled knowledge where it starts to create experts, right? So instead of having 405 billion active parameters, you could have 405 billion parameters, but only 5 billion that are actually active. Makes it cheaper, makes it faster. And so I'm listening to this guy last night from the video talk about this, and I'm like, the light bulb clicking off is perfect for this, obviously coming up, because that's what the experts believe ChatGPT unlocked. That's what they believe OpenAI unlocked with the first release of ChatGPT, is the first mixture of expert model actually capable of human conversation. The reason that I think it's so relevant to our conversation today is because you want to talk about a better user experience. I know more people than ever that are using new technology, and they're using ChatGPT. They're using Gemini. They're using Claude. They're using Grok. They're using Perplexity. People that are in their, they're what we would consider our elders, right? They're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old using these tools. That doesn't happen. I know people that still have flip phones, but they're using ChatGPT. And I think that is like the proof point, right? That is a piece of software that was so game-changing to the world that we're now at a point where there's hundreds of millions of people, billions of people every month actively using these tools. And so to Connor's point, what do you actually need to do for transparency and trust? The answer is you don't have to solve transparency and trust. The answer is you have to build a product that is visionary and game-changing to the world, to the point where people don't care about that. They care about the product. And then we all need to hope that the companies building these things are actually trying to do the right things. And I will call out and say that you can say whatever you want about the companies. OpenAI, Anthropic, I think they're trying to do the right things. Are they probably taking the data and selling it? Of course, because like making money in some way, shape, or form, sure. But they've got safety teams. They're hiring humongous safety teams. They're doing all these things to figure out how these things are going to impact the world. And I think that's really important because even though it might not be perfect, they're at least trying. And there is a history of big tech not even trying. So may not be perfect, but they're trying. So TLDR.
Yeah, I think it's important to delineate between the types of data and what should be the bar for each of those. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly, my point, right? I lean more on the sides where I'm going to hold that information, be a little bit more sensitive to it. I'm not going to, download the new face scanning app that comes out and, it's like owned by some, foreign country. But at the same time, I did the clear thing. So there is a level to it. Everything is a spectrum, and where do you find a majority of people in that spectrum? I think the important piece as we move into agentic commerce is this level of, what are people accepting with that? What are they used to in their everyday life right now? And what are they going to be comfortable with moving forward? And to me, I think it really drills down to finances. I think when you think about this, and this is why we've all collaborated on this barista test. I think it's very similar to a neighbor test. People openly post on Facebook. I'm going to use just a large platform that across all generations, people openly post on it. So you're effectively saying, here is my social graph. Do you want a lot of the information that ends up probably getting tied to that social graph that maybe gets resold? If you had a Boolean to say yes or no, you'd probably say no. But you're not going to freak out over that. What you would freak out over is Chase, Bank of America, et cetera, leaking all your financial information. If my neighbor across the street, because I already posted it, thinks I have some opinions on something and it maps to a couple things because I'm liking it, well, I already know that they can see that in some form or fashion. I'm fine with that. But if my neighbor knows how much money I have in my bank account, what transactions I'm making, things like that, that is extremely different. And so as we move into an AI area, that's kind of the big piece that we need to solve versus just the broad term of data.
Definitely. So real quick, for those of you that have not heard, we're going to give you a definition of the barista test. And because I have someone here today who is very well versed in this and drove this concept. I actually think you're the I don't know if the neighbor test was like a big thing. I'd never heard of that before. You're the one that mentioned it to me. Probably is a big thing. I'm just, I don't know, not super well read in that area. But Connor is the one who actually came up with the barista test, or at least the one that I'm familiar with. So I'm going to let Connor, the creator of the barista test, by the way, we need to update your Twitter profile because you have to be shouting that from the rooftops. I want you to give a quick intro to what the barista test is, why it's relevant, and then after that, I want to we'll pivot that a little bit, and not pivot. We'll dive into why we built Byte and how it is relevant to privacy and scale.
Yeah, that sounds like something I put on my LinkedIn across like 50 other like fake accolades. No, I think everyone's come to this conclusion of minimal viable privacy, or said another way, what this barista test is. And it's similar to, I think, people remember the early days of crypto, especially in late 2018, 2019, early 2020s, was the grandma test. Everyone talked about that, and that went away because I think people, for the most part, were able to get over that hurdle, where this is the barista test with regards to privacy. And so it's a privacy benchmark. Its goal is that for all blockchains, as we move into these real world transactions, that it meets this benchmark. And what that benchmark is can this on-chain transaction complete and be executed without exposing unnecessary payer information or information that I just don't want exposed. So how does that play into a barista? So if I go into I go in to get a coffee, or what is it, Falcor, a flat white in London?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that more of a Europe thing, not the island? So if I go to a coffee shop and I order, a mocha or cappuccino, and I pay the barista for that coffee, and most likely, I'm going to pay with a credit card or Apple Pay. While I'm paying for that, and that is processing, and you see it execute on the machine, I sign it, I give my unnecessary tip, because you always have to do that in America. It ends right there, right? I get my service that's provided to me, I get my product, and the barista doesn't know any of my financial information, and no one behind me. And so how does that play out kind of broadly in relation to the neighbor test and other items? We collectively understand that governments know how much money we have. Maybe not, they're tracking us, every single second and can't control it, but they know. If they're going to do an audit, they can figure that out. You're same with our banks. We're relying on them to hold that privacy. Once again, my neighbor test, I don't want my neighbor to know it. But I understand that the bank, someone working there, could pull it up and see that. And so, but what don't we want to know? We don't want everyone around us to know how much money we had, what was the last transaction we made. We want that minimal viable privacy, and that mimics every day. Now, how does that work on chain? That's what we need to figure out, and that's really what Byte is for. And that's something that we want to drive within the industry, because the value, it's a two-sided coin, the value of blockchain, the immutable nature, the tracking of it breaks this barista test. because it's immutable and it's tracking. And I bring this back to like first principles of the birthplace of blockchain and back to Satoshi. Within that white paper, it was mentioned about privacy. It was said that we potentially need, I don't know what the exact quote is, but essentially
you need to pretty much make a new wallet every time you do a transaction, so you can't be tracked.
Crazy,
right? In essence, yeah.
Exactly.
I looked it up the other month.
Yeah, and so like to your point, how do we compare that to everyday world? What if we had to get a credit card every single time I went to go buy my cup of coffee? Untenable. Not this increased user experience that we talked about. How do we get people to use AI and blockchain? So now when we move into agentic world where all of these pieces are going to be tied across, because the thing that blockchains have solved in the best product market fit has been stable coins and moving money. We can move money really fast, really cheap, and pretty much anywhere. But right now you can track that. Or if you can't, it's down the path of the tornado caches and those of the worlds that aren't actually commercially viable. So to bring this full circle, the barista test is this benchmark where it's enough privacy where we can have our day-to-day interactions, where it's viable for a business to understand that I'm a real person. I'm maybe either KYC'd, AML'd, I am a standing citizen, but nothing else. They can't track the last transactions I had, all my balances, etc. So yeah, that's really what it is, and I'm sure Sawyer can dig into more of the technical pieces.
Love it. I think let's start first with just let's just use a quick. I love using the kind of mute yourself.
Oh.
I love a good example. We've been using every like technological iteration in the world has had their own version of like ABC naming. So in finance and crypto, we tend to use Alice, Bob, and then the C's usually Charlie, but we have a C here, so we'll use Connor. So a good example of just like the barista test in action, right? I go to a coffee shop, right? I want to go and I order an Americano. I say, "Hey Falcor, I want an Americano, please." He says, "Sure thing." Plugs into the register, pops up. I pay, right, as Connor mentioned. What can Falcor see? Just that I paid. Maybe he can see a tiny bit of information, just enough to, essentially prove that I paid and have money, right? If it gets declined, whatever it is. He hands me my coffee and I leave. Connor has no idea that I bought a coffee unless he was standing there next to me, ordering behind me or in front of me, waiting for his coffee. And he can't see into my bank account. Falcor can't see into my bank account. Falcor can't see the other, 12 digits of my credit card. Sorry, I had to count there. That's embarrassing. But you kind of get the gist, right? There's all these pieces of information that actually get tracked throughout this process. And at the end of the day, almost spilled my coffee actually. At the end of the day, if Falcor works at a coffee shop, the coffee shop can maybe see my order, or they can't see my order. They can maybe track it later. If I come back in, maybe they could see my history. They can see maybe my history of payments. They can see, again, maybe my 4 digits of my credit card at the end, my name, stuff like that. But they can't see my whole life. They also can't see if last night Connor and I went out to dinner and I bought Connor dinner or Connor bought me dinner. They can't see that on my credit card. That's not how blockchain works today. Today, if you go on Ethereum if I go on Ethereum, because I'm in this scenario, Alice, I go on Ethereum and I pay for my coffee using USDC or whatever, and it goes to the coffee shop Falcor works at. Guess what? The whole world knows that I just bought a coffee, especially if I've got an ENS name hooked up, which ENS names are actually really nice, but, well, they're the opposite of private, right? So the idea here is that as we start to think about, I think the agentic side and even just like the normal adoption curve of where blockchain fits in the world, the reality is we need some level of this, right? And I agree. The tornado caches, stuff like that, maybe one day they'll be allowed in the world. But the reality is today, there's been too many issues. And whether or not people did or did not do bad things. We're not commenting on that. The reality is there's issues with how things are perceived. And so when we think about a business, right? A business needs to they just need to facilitate payment, right? You use Stripe, you use Visa, you have a credit card, you use a bank, whatever it may be. You've got all these different tools. And the thing is to use most of these tools, well, you need to be KYC'd in most cases or KYB'd. To use most of these tools, you need to do some form of proof. There's some basic level of tracking, but again, there's some level of commercially viable privacy. So let's talk about Byte for a second, scale shill of the day. How do we fix this? Right? Like, how do we actually fix this? And before I go into a tech deep ramble, I'd love both Falcor, your and Connor's opinions on, where are we at today? What are some of the things you guys have maybe tried and used? Whether it's like ZK or you've tried Zcash or anything like that, or where do you see this coming and going? And then I'll kind of dive into the Byte side.
Yeah, let me hop in quick, and then I'll toss it over because I've probably spoken too much. But I think one piece that you said at the end there that I want to piggyback on was the commercially viable privacy, and maybe just from an alliteration standpoint, something that I've been saying a lot that I think we've been using across the company is commercially confidential. And the goal of that is that this adverb of commercially in front of it is meant to be the qualifier. It's just enough, right? We can be confidential, but what is that level? And so this just gets back to the beginning part of our conversation is, where are you meeting your consumer and what is enough for them? There's a great Substack by essentially like the godfather of UX, Jacob Nielsen, who talks about the main quote is, don't track what your customers say, track what they do. And this is like very similar to the famous Henry Ford quote. If he asked customers what they wanted, they would have wanted faster horses, and he gave them a car instead. So I think when we think about that from like applications and blockchain standpoint, if we tell someone that, hey, we're going to give you this amount of privacy, this amount of et cetera, from a tech standpoint, they might tell you something. So it's really difficult to figure out what do they actually want. And so we've got to take best practices from how individuals operate in the real world right now. And that's how I've been thinking about it, is what is commercially viable in a confidential standpoint. People are okay with some information being out there within your social graph, me giving out my eyeballs for Clear because of an incredible product I get, me writing a lot of information in ChatGPT and probably knowing way too much about me if they can give me a good product. But I'm not okay with walking to the barista and having now the barista know how much money I have so they can come track me down after their shift. Or the person behind me seeing what that is and being a nefarious actor. So yeah, before we get into specifics, you mentioned that, and I think that's a really critical piece as we get into these stages of building it and working directly with developers, and then getting their feedback as they're building these items. What on that spectrum solves a problem but doesn't break it, and that's going to be the sticky part of all this.
I think, like, for me, the thing that is most important is everyone's scared, right? To put their credit card into different places. I was talking to Jack about this a couple of weeks ago, and I said, there are so many free trials, for example, right? There could be this great application that you want to use. You don't want to pay the whatever, the $20. So you go for a free trial, but you're locking yourself into A, remembering to cancel it, and B, trusting the service provider that you're using, that they're going to give you they're not going to do anything nefarious with your card information. And the thing that's super interesting for me about the likes of Agentic, commerce and transactions is, and I asked both Jack and Stan this. I said, hey, would you do 10 cents or $1 for one action on this application instead of signing up for a free trial? And they all said yes, right? So I think what it does is it really opens up potentially new revenue streams, but B, it's going to allow a lot more kind of adventuring off into the internet and into these new potential applications and things like that. I'll give you a great example. The other week, GenSpark, right, an AI platform, did this incredible deal, right? It was like $19.99 or something a month, and you got unlimited everything across the board. But I didn't want to put I wasn't 100% sure on who they were. I didn't completely trust it. For some reason, Sawyer did, so he went and did it. But the point is, I would have never experienced that application. But if there was a way for me to use, this agentic commerce and things like that, I would have.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you're speaking towards, I think, is a lot of people's feelings about cash, right? And that's what effectively USDC can be, especially if you have Byte as a part of it. Because if you're out hanging out with your buddies, you're at a pub, you're at a ball game, you're doing something out in the wild, and there was something, okay, I want to buy these peanuts, or I want to play this game on the boardwalk. You have $5. You get the $5 because of your point. There's not a chance that I can lose my identity or I'm going to lose any more than this $5. And so you're a lot more willing to experiment and pay for things when you know that that's not going to be have any downside risk involved in that, which I think is really interesting from like a internet native standpoint, which is why I'm so excited for X4.2 is now you can do that. Now we have this open protocol that allows you to pay for something with, obviously there's a lot of nuances to this, and they're still figuring out chargebacks and discovery and what that's going to look like. But effectively right now it's cash, and you're solving this HTTP status code of 402 that is meant to just trustlessly pay.
Yeah, I like it.
It's really funny because there was a period of time. It's almost back to like the Clear thing. There's a period of time where when I go to like buy, I mean, I'm an engineer. I like to build stuff and tinker and try stuff, and so I put my credit card into a lot of places. Honestly, surprised, knock on wood, this credit card that I'm using right now has not gotten compromised yet, because like, I don't know, it's been put in a lot of places that have not used like a third party provider recently. Like I've been giving them my credit card, and so it's whatever, right? It's why it's a credit card. But there was a time back in like the early days of Stripe, right around when they bought Link. I don't know if you remember, Link started popping up everywhere. And I was like, what the heck is Link? And why does it have my credit card? And like, I mean, I didn't know at the time, right? Now it's like commonplace. But these days, at least in the US, there's this app called Shop. Everywhere I go now, every business has Shop. I literally buy something like in person and I get a notification on my phone. Thanks for shopping with Shop. And I'm like, all right, guess they're on Shop. It's like, it's really weird because I feel like there's been a big shift in that with some people. Like I used to be very much so like you talk where I was like, I wouldn't put my credit card in anything. Now I just don't care.
I think like, the parallel to this is there's two items. One, you don't care because you've got consumer protections. Because you've got chargebacks, you've got some type of safety net, you've got a person, and probably honestly an agent in the future that you're going to call to solve a problem if you do get hacked, which that's an open space to figure out for X402. But the interesting parallel right now is, I have that Shop piece too, and I downloaded the Shop app, and now I can track these purchases. And so maybe I don't have a recurring purchase, but I can go back and purchase something really easily again. So adding that functionality of connectivity to your purchases, but no one can see that. So I kind of just bring this back to, this barista test, and what we're doing with Byte is that you want to have a level of user experience where maybe tracking what my purchases are within the app is valuable to me because it makes me buy that shampoo like you mentioned, or buy new coffee. However, I don't want anybody else to see what's in my shop purchases. So when we put this towards what we're building at scale for Byte and where we think the agentic feature is going to go, I'll cover just high level how I view Byte, and then you guys can kick in some of the technical pieces or overlap between it. But simply, it's blockchain integrated threshold encryption. Byte for short is solving this barista test. It's our attempt at doing this, and it's going to be evolving over time, and something that we continue to iterate on with developers of what that perfect spot is in the spectrum. But it's a multi-step approach to provide users and then agents this framework and primitive of privacy that can be commercially confidential. And so within that, it is encrypted transactions. So said another way, you can't see what I spent. When I go to the store, the person behind me doesn't see how much money I just spent in the product coming back. Conditional triggers. Great if that product came to a certain price, please buy this for me. Maybe it's on my shop app, maybe it's on something else. I'm tracking TVs across 5 different companies out there. And once it hits a price, I know that's a price I'm willing to pay. And then re-encryption, keep that private. Don't just allow that to float out there. And then in the future, I think the big piece, the long-term exciting piece of this is fully homomorphic encryption, where you can start to do actions based off of that encryption. But just those first 3 steps are extremely important in allowing developers this space to build applications to find that product market fit on that spectrum. And I guess I'll do a scale shield for this. If there's developers out there that are excited about building the agentic world and see that to have a consumer application, Byte is extremely important. We're rolling out sandboxes for it. We've got it in production, and please reach out to myself, anybody on the BD team, because we want you to test with us and provide some feedback.
Whatever you do, don't reach out to me, because I will probably ignore you. I don't do it on purpose, but for some reason, I get a lot of people outreaching to me. It's quite weird. Yeah.
You can outreach Falcor. I approve that.
It'll just take 6 months for just take 6 months for a reply.
Just get an agent. Just get an agent in your inbox that if someone reaches out for BD purposes, we auto forward.
And that's it, man. I wouldn't trust the agent. Well, if it was private,
that's private.
Don't trust the agent.
It's funny. I gave this a lot of thought because, well, it's my job. My job is to figure out how to get people to build this stuff, right, at the end of the day. And so what's really interesting is when you have really big ideas like this, it can become very complicated to try to convince someone to say, well, you should use this thing. And I want to just pull out, there's a very specific thing that Connor just said that I just want to double click into, and then we're going to talk more about these features, which is these are things for people who are building. These are things for developers, whether you're a solo dev, whether you've built a whole company and you're trying to find PMF, whether you're trying to find that solution to your product. These are primitives for you to build on and solve one of the hardest problems in the world right now. The reality is that every single Fortune 500, every single enterprise company, every single business in the world now has or is thinking about a stablecoin strategy. They're thinking about blockchain. They're thinking about how they can use this to pad their margins. Yep. The reality is that a whole new wave of businesses are going to be built on the back of just this blend of fintech and blockchain and privacy. Take agents out of it. This is literally just one very specific thing. Byte solves that. Byte enhances that. Doesn't solve it. It enhances that incredibly. And so if you are thinking about how do I differentiate myself from this wallet? How do I differentiate myself from this lending protocol? How do I differentiate myself from this stablecoin transfer protocol? Byte. You literally could build the exact same thing everyone else has, but you add Byte on a scale chain and you are differentiated. And that's really important because that's arguably how some of the best technology in the world is actually made when you leave blockchain, is just by adding that one thing that makes you better.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of that is it gets back to like, what does a consumer want, and maybe to that original question of fear of what's going to keep me from using this. If you can, educate the consumer that this isn't pitching them blockchain, it's just pitching them this is an insecure environment, and then you're pitching your product on top of that, right? No one goes out and builds a game, builds a financial web app, builds any of these things that we use on a daily basis and tells them that, oh, and I'm using this cloud provider in the back end. The blockchain should be able to unlock the features that then you can go sell for them, and unlock the new lifestyle that they're going to be able to have because of it. So maybe an example is I can pitch an application where I tell someone, hey, you can on-ramp some money into this application, and I'm going to, within this application, be your wealth robo advisor. That's out there right now. People understand that, but that's going to be way better on blockchain. You're going to have access to RWAs, treasuries, actually crypto, tokenized assets once stocks come on board, and it's all going to be more efficient, and you're going to actually own those tokens too. Maybe at first those people don't even realize that it's on chain, and they don't first understand that you're using Byte, but they are using it because they understand, okay, I've got some privacy within this, and I'm making more money than my friend who has his money go parked at the bank, because I'm leveraging the stablecoin yield and the Aave yield and arbitrage across Forex markets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all unlocked because of blockchain, AI, and Byte. So I think that's the big piece, is like, what does that unlock for your end user? And that's the vision to be thinking about.
Definitely. I think, the part that I kind of want to leave off on here, and why me as a developer, I'm so excited about this, and me as the person that gets to support people that are going to come and build this stuff, is I've just been talking with people and ideating on what does this solve, right? And so I just want to throw some ideas out, see if, Falcor, you or Connor, if anything sparks something cool here. But just to kind of give an idea of like, well, how is this going to impact an agent, right? How's it going to impact agentic commerce? Well, the answer is agents use tools like building blocks. They use APIs like building blocks. They use code like building blocks. The more things you give agents, well, actual autonomous agents will get better, right? They could do more. And so if we're looking at a wealth agent, a good example is right now it could swap, right? All the agents that are doing trading can swap. They can open positions. Great, cool. The problem is all the alpha, all the strategies, all the actions are public. Not so cool. That's solved easily with Byte right now. We actually have that live in production. Works great. You can literally take any Solidity contracts, put them on a scale chain, boom, you've got some encryption. But now let's look at the conditional transactions, what Connor had referred to as the triggers. Something I'm super excited about, because it unlocks a whole new wave of functionality that when you give it to a prompt and then you give it to like a wealth agent, starts to unlock some really interesting, safety and functionality measures, I think. A really good example is limit orders. Most people don't know this, but if you are doing trading, doesn't matter whether you're using crypto or stocks or anything, if you open a market order, you're getting wrecked. It's the reality, because you're just getting placed on the next order and the market's already moving on you. So you're probably losing money. You will almost always have better success by placing a limit order at a price. Connor, you're the finance expert. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been my experience, and all the research I've done says that is relatively common public knowledge. Don't do market orders if you can avoid it. The problem is clobs are hard. People are raising a lot of money to build clobs, and most of them still fail on chain. Why? Because A, they're not really differentiated. B, they're not better than centralized platforms. And C, without privacy, there's really no value to doing it on chain. What we can actually do with conditional transactions, for example, is we can create limit orders on top of an AMM. Price hits X on an Oracle, Polymarket hits Y, sentiment hits Z, trade. You can actually do limit orders based on things outside of price and still trigger an automatic trade on an AMM or on a cloud or a position on, an RWA. It doesn't matter. That's just one example of what you can do with a conditional transaction that is encrypted private to the blockchain until after execution. Now you want to talk about an automated wealth manager. Well, your average wealth manager only has access to so many tools. Those tools are limited and they charge you a fortune. You're probably willing to pay a fortune, though, if this thing has access to far more liquidity and functionality and can automatically determine these things on the fly. That's agency, right? If we go all the way back to the first thing we talked about, if it can actually take incoming information and plan out, conditions, and those conditions are met and put in trades, we start to actually make progress toward, agency on chain, right? And the key thing that it needs is it needs enough privacy to be viable. None of this works if it can't plan itself out ahead of time on chain. Because the reality is, this is a fun fact for all of you at home that don't know much about AI agents, they're not perfect. Humans aren't perfect, and AI agents are built almost on a very similar train of design as a human brain. And just like you forget stuff, the AI agent forgets stuff. And I guarantee you're not going to be happy if it goes to place an order on something that could make you $100,000 and it forgets to execute. It's not going to make you very happy when all of a sudden it went from plus 100,000 to guess what? Your portfolio is empty. But we can solve that if it can start to plan out ahead and create a kind of track record for itself. But you don't leak what you're going to do, because what happens when you leak what you do? Some rude Mev bot comes in, takes your position, steals your money. Stop being muted.
That's okay, because what I said was really stupid. Oh, listen, it's been, I think we can all agree that, the future of the payments on the internet, is going to be through, agentic commerce, right? It's going to be good. I think I'm going to put money on it. The first big company that's going to do it is going to be X, seeing as they've pretty much already announced pay-per-use. So how are you going to do pay-per-use? Through X402.
X402. X402.
Let me. I don't know if this is you guys are going to close it, but I want to get one piece in with X402 and what we're doing at SKALE, and just a call to action, right? I can't be a sales guy without a call to action. So we're really excited about where SKALE is going, not only this year, but in this next quarter. We've been building, this network of horizontal compute with privacy as a primitive for, 7, 8+ years. And, now we're in a segment that really needs that. It can exponentially grow, and that's agents, right? People didn't use ChatGPT a couple years ago. Now it's almost ubiquitous at 1 billion users. And I think we're going to see even a higher growth with agents, because they can be working all the time and there's no limit to it. We could reach, billions of agents, tens of billions of agents, because there's going to be more than one agent per person. And how are we kicking that off? We've got a really exciting X402 hackathon in February. We'll be sharing more information in the next couple of weeks on that, and some of the key sponsors that are partnering with us. I'll tease that out, but some of the biggest in the space, and being able to build these agentic applications on SKALE. Why X402? X402 is this open standard meant for everyone to use, and it is trustlessly able to define and pay for these objects and unlocking these agentic marketplaces. And for us at SKALE, with our block nest limits, our speed, our finality, and our ability to, no pun intended, scale but horizontally expand, it's perfectly built for agents. So we want to have you come on board, test it. If you can't wait until February, ping myself, ping Sawyer. If it's really urgent, ping Falcor, and we'll get you on board and testing, and you can be part of this process. We're really excited about
what Scale can do in Q1 specifically for agentic commerce.
100%. So yeah, anything
Definitely.
final from you, my friend?
Definitely ping Falcor. If you take anything from this classroom Scale school today, it's if you're going to DM it, anybody at Scale, definitely DM Falcor because he checks his inbox every 5 minutes.
Yeah,
All you're doing is upsetting people.
I'm just kidding. No, it was absolute pleasure having Connor on today.
100%.
For those of you that don't know, Connor has a very strong background in finance consulting, just very well read and versed across many things. And he's also so much more articulate than me, as you can tell from my rambling versus his quick, concise answers. So just, pleasure having you on. We're going to have you on again for sure. And just the biggest thing is if you are not sure about privacy and you don't know if what you're building needs privacy, the answer is yes, it needs privacy. Always. It always needs privacy.
Yeah.
I can't believe I have to come back to school. I thought this was gonna be like my one and done for the year. Got in early and then checked out.
But you're not a teacher. You're not a student. You're a teacher.
Back, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, you're like an assistant teacher. You know in the classroom the teacher has the big desk and then they always put the assistant kind of like over on the side in the kid desk. It's like they've got the crayons in front of them.
You put me in the kid desk. I got it.
Yeah.
All right. I like that.
Yeah. But you're at the kid desk and apparently I'm a barista. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Remember, privacy it's not a bad thing. If people are offering privacy, use it. There's a reason, right? So that's it. We're done. It's start of the year. I think we're all still a little holiday brained.
I'm drinking 5 cups of coffee next week.
Dude, I might join you. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
Thanks everyone.
See ya.